Bitcoin Liberty Live, episode 54, back
Ah,
again
I'm
for your
unprepared.
viewing
I'm over here trying to quote tweet us. Join join
promo
the
on
old fogies for
X, Rumble, YouTube,
Bitcoin
Twitch,
love.
everywhere. Need to get on Fountain and
Zapstream, man.
Zapstream. I know.
Yeah, we can go
I had,
head to head with the what is it, TFTC guys.
I know. I haven't. I had a few weeks ago. I had a moment to try to like sort some of that out, and I don't always have the time to figure it out. But I want to get where the Bitcoiners are. Out of coffee.
Go.
I have a little bit.
Oh, lucky
So,
you. I brought a new bottle today. I got a little Saratoga. Oh, whoops.
oh, nice.
Saratoga. Yeah. Soda water.
Brought to you by Bitcoin Liberty Live. I
Yeah.
Wow, the
Huh?
social media excitement over Bitcoin development, Bitcoin Core. What is going on here? I Matthew Kratter again. I love his videos. I love what he says. I get so uh, educated, but motivated, reminded of the philosophy of Bitcoin, Satoshi's original vision, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system, um, fettered over the years by ordinals and other inscription things.
Yeah.
And yet, despite all that, SegWit and Taproot, and it opened up little avenues to put stuff on there that's not money and is sidechain shitcoin on Bitcoin stuff. And yet, if I start to get worried about attack vectors and things, Bitcoin has survived all that, continues to run. TikTok next block. The market has managed all the ordinal shitcoin stuff just fine. Um, and I
Uh,
just don't want new opening avenues for the potential for just more of that. Um, I think Bitcoin will just always be perpetually, it'll self manage and be fine. Although, man, the my view on it all, and I don't want to just rag on Jameson a lot, but I mean Peter Todd and others, the attitude and the energy I get from when people start to catch up and pay attention and realize that like core version 28 and proposals, the what do they
oh,
call them, release
pull
polls and whatnot.
yeah, it's a pull request. It's pull request
Pull
32
request.
49 or where I can't remember the exact number.
So
Yeah.
as we catch up and we realize, what does this mean? Why is this happening? What are the potentials here? And then the response is elitist, arrogant. Um, I don't know. I think at a technical level, there are some reasons why I could see why they might do it.
Mm.
But at a social Bitcoin philosophy level, as we're getting up to speed, it's like, wait, why? And then who's for what purpose? Who's benefiting? Is this necessary? The analogy being like we have fences up that aren't perfect, but they help protect Bitcoin. Can animals get through the fence sometimes? Yes. But if some animals are getting through the fence, you're like, well, animals can get through the fence, so just get rid of the fences.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. So
I don't know. I don't know if that's quite a perfect analogy. Like I have devoted, as we were just talking about offline, like I keep finding ways to not do the work I need to be doing on MicroSeed. Like I have so much shit I need to be doing to prepare for Vegas, and I keep like I spent the last week just buried up to my eyeballs in the Opportune debate, and it was great for me because I learned a truck ton about the sort of the debate, the essentials of the debate, what's been going on, kind of the history of this whole thing. I don't know if you saw Grass Fed Bitcoin's video. He put out like an hour and a half
yeah,
long video in sort of defense of the monetary use case and we shouldn't tolerate spam and this, that, and the other thing.
yeah,
And in a way, I mean, I support that concept 100%. Like I'm 1000% on board with what he said. Like, yes,
yeah.
Bitcoin
Me
should
too.
not be a spam network. It should not be a data storage network, et cetera, et cetera. The hiccup in that whole thing is like what it sounds to me like, or what it becomes is like there was a thing that he wanted to do 3 years ago with Taproot when they first discovered ordinals and inscriptions and all that kind of shit. And they figured, because right now what's happening is people are stuffing data into blocks, into witness data, right? And witness data, they can stuff up to 4 MB of data, which is bloating the shit out of the blockchain. It's not good. It's not good for anybody except for the people that are selling dick butt JPEGs and God knows what else they're trying to stuff in there. And so the problem is it's depending on whose side you take, because they looked at it back then, they being core, and they said, we can try filtering, but that's got some downsides to it as well. Dash Jr. and Grassfed Bitcoin both said, Mechanic both said, no, filtering works. We're going to make filtering. And they launched Knots, right? And they had Or Disrespecter. They put, I think, a bit proposal to incorporate filtering, and it got shot down, right? So whether or not it's a if because you can look at it one way and go, core should have done something about this back then and didn't. The core people say it's a cat and mouse game, and we've already uncorked it, right? The fact that we just created this vector that nobody anticipated when they did the SegWit upgrade and the Taproot upgrade. Nobody anticipated. They all thought this is going to help with throughput. This is going to be a net benefit, yada, yada, yada. And even Mechanic in his video said, or in a different video said, well, yeah, I supported Taproot and SegWit. And I go, well, because he didn't anticipate this malicious use of that witness data, right? And for
Yeah.
those who don't know, the witness data gets a 75% discount on the fees. So the point Core is making now, roughly, and I'm probably going to butcher this a little bit, is they go, look, op return, the reason for this pull request, or at least part of the reason for this pull request, if you actually read the thread, they go, well, we talked about this a long time ago about getting rid of the op return limits because there's no point in it. Like, people can stuff way more data into witness data. But what relaxing op return does is enables some users to, instead of doing something that bloats the network, they can do something that's prunable, which is op return.
Right.
And so Dash Jr. and Mechanic's opposition is like, we should still be filtering, which no one supported, or at least fewer people supported than were for. And we should not encourage it by making it easier for people to add spam. So I think the short-sightedness on Core is they go, well, we should just have unlimited op return data. And you go, well, that's a huge new attack vector. And they go, well, the financial thing incentivizes this, and they'll probably do this, and da-da-da-da-da. The core reasoning is like, we want nodes to represent the actual activity on the blockchain, period, right? And right now, you've got people that are bypassing. If you put filters up, they say they're just going to bypass that. That's going to push more of this stuff to private rails, and it's going to make the mempool fracture, and it's going to delay block propagation times, right?
Yeah, it loads up the relays if the mempool doesn't match what the blocks are, and it's just
Yeah, it slows
inefficiencies.
everything down. It's inefficient, and you're going to bloat the blockchain anyway because people are using the cornerstone of this thing was the Satria. They need something for their watchtower data.
Right.
There's some sort of ZK rollup thing, but they needed 144 bytes in op return. And I think
Right.
somewhere in the back channels they said, "Hey, look, if you just give us 144 bytes in op return, we'll stop using unspendable taproot outputs," which is the thing that absolutely bloats it. And you can't prune that. You can't get rid of that. That's just part of the chain now. And so I think the dev said, well, we talked about this 2 years ago and we didn't want to bring it up at the time because people were already pissed off about everything else we were doing with Taproot and not filtering and this and that. So we'll just sit on our hands. But now the conversation has come around full circle and they're saying, well, let's just get rid of the limit. The problem with that is, I think, from my perspective, is that, again, is another gross underestimation of what a malicious attacker could do. Because if someone came along like North Korea and said, hey, I want to cripple the United States economy by collapsing Bitcoin, I'm going to spam op return with as much data as I can. I don't care if I lose money. And the core devs are going, well, the financial incentive means the spammers are going to go here instead of there. And if they still want to spam, they're most likely going to go to witness data. and no one's going to abuse op return without a limit. I go, that's a fundamentally flawed idea. Like, there is a wide open attack vector for someone who doesn't mind losing money and wants to screw you over. So, but there's also the argument to be made, like, all right, well, lift the cap. The reason they want to get rid of the limits entirely, or one of the reasons anyway, is because they don't want to keep relitigating the issue, because they go, okay, well, if we open it up from 80 bytes or 83 bytes to 144 for Satria, 3 months from now, some other developer is going to come on and go, well, we need 170 bytes. And they don't want to go through the whole discussion again about let's
Yeah.
170 or 200 or 220 or whatever it is. My counter to that is your responsibility as a developer. You need to very carefully consider every single request to make these modifications. And even opening it up to 144 doesn't necessarily mean it's going to cut down on the spam in witness data. What you can very easily end up with is more spam in op return and more spam in witness data, and it's not going to fix anything. In fact, there may
Right.
be some other back channel thing uh, where people can not only abuse witness data, but they can do it more effectively by having more op return data to tinker with. So I think they're underestimating malicious actions, is my
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, me too. I think there'll always be another opportunistic shitcoiner, market trying to like cash on layers in Bitcoin, trying to got to be on the got to be on the base layer to get your shit in there, and it's endless. So you make it work in one way to try to fix it over there, and then oh nope, here's another one, here's another reason, So I just I don't like it. I I wish it's like if the and that's where trying to reconcile if the core developers were held true to Satoshi's vision, we're like, no, we need all these fences because the purpose of this is not to just, well, it's a network to put stuff out there and avoid the conversation that is this an electronic cash system, period. Or do we want to allow for network messaging type stuff to be in there?
Well, that discussion went out the window 3 years ago with Taproot, and however many 8 years ago
Yeah,
with Segwit, right?
the door is open. You can do it now.
It's that's done, right? That
Yeah.
that is a fact of life in the Bitcoin network now. The unfortunate after effect of that is there's a significant amount of miner revenue that comes from stuffing shit onto the blockchain. And so the core's perspective is like, well, look, if we don't want to get to a place where people just bypass the public mempool, because that's going to screw a bunch of shit up, and that's going to economically incentivize moving to private rails. The problem with that logic, though, is there's even if they make sure that the public mempool mirrors what the blocks actually represent or what's actually getting stuffed into these blocks, that doesn't necessarily mean that people aren't going to start favoring private rails, especially if it becomes more profitable.
Hmm.
The counter to that is if Bitcoin really does go to the moon, and you start getting these like $1 million valuations of Bitcoin, or 2 million or 5 million or whatever, then a lot of that ordinal spam kind of goes away, because you go, well, it's there's zero
Yeah.
chance I'll process that transaction when I have this huge other transaction that needs to move right now. And
Yeah.
if you're going like, hey, we're BlackRock and we need to transfer 5 million Bitcoin to Fidelity, and it needs to happen right now, and we're going to get in that block, we don't care what, here's a great big fat fee. I can guarantee you the miner is going to go, well, you can take your your dick butt JPEG and go stuff it, because we're going to be transferring this huge sum with this massive fee attached to it, rather than whatever they're spamming for dick butt pictures and so on and so forth. But
Yeah.
the problem is there's a huge problem with mining centralization already. And
Hmm.
depending on which side of the debate you fall on, you go, if we do nothing, then it encourages bloat. And if we do something, it might help alleviate some of the pressure to go to private relays. And there's no guarantee on either outcome, right?
Hmm.
So the problem already exists, and it's a major problem for Bitcoin right now. Is like, and so which is why I admire and respect Dash Jr. and Mechanics' positions. They go, we need to unwind this.
Yeah.
significant headwinds they face in that position is like, well, this is already uncorked. It's the genie's already out of the bottle. And so
Yeah.
you look at that and go, well, centralization of the Bitcoin network might be an inevitability at this point. And so we need to be really careful about what's happening now. So I don't know, man. It's tough. The problem I had with the whole conversation is people start throwing around things like core is corrupt and they're compromised and this and that. And I go, that's not helpful and it's not necessarily reflective of who they are. If you're going to make an accusation of someone being compromised, bring receipts, bring fucking evidence. If you want to just make these ludicrous accusations nakedly, then I go, well, that's all you're doing is inflaming people that aren't going to bother to look at the details, and they're not going to have enough of a nuanced understanding to see which side has the better merits of this argument. So, but core isn't
Yeah.
their own thing because they dropped the band hammer on mechanic in the GitHub, and they had a concept ACK from I think Satria, but then they hid it. They censored it. They didn't let that, so that got buried. And you go, you can't do
Yeah.
that shit, man. It's got to be an open discussion.
Yeah. That's where when I first was learning about it, I thought this is a real technical vulnerability and a technical problem, and I don't like where core is going. And that, like you said, you've studied it more than I have. But as I learn more about it, I see it as less of a risk really to Bitcoin or opening a big door. But I don't now like or trust necessarily the open explanation or transparency about at the technical level the reasons and whys. So what I would see then superficially would be people raising concerns, naive or accusatory or otherwise. I think honestly, I think Bitcoin Mechanics' approach is pretty rational and thoughtful. He's not being just trolly and angry about it, but it's well thought out. But when the response, and I'll just call out Lop, Jameson Lop is the a more of a vocal person who
He's a spam.
tends to be like, you're not a developer, you're not in the GitHub forum. Uh, you're welcome to join if you'll contribute, but otherwise you're not part of the conversation. It's like, and then people would raise concerns or have questions, and he'd answer some stuff, but it's not enough. It's like, explain it to us then. People would say, what is the benefit to this? And
Yeah.
I don't think people were getting the explanation, like, okay, why? And it was like, you don't understand. It's been talked about for a long time. It's like, okay, I still don't get it.
Well,
Um,
there is some merit to his position because if you're a dev, right, and you constantly get hammer fucked by people that have some emotional response to a thing they don't really understand, it gets exhausting. It's just like trying to orange pill people and they go, oh, well, what, and they come up with some ridiculous. What if there's a nuclear war? Or what if you just go, fuck, I'm so tired of listening to this shit that eventually you go, well, how come you're just not honestly engaging with them? Because I'm sick of hearing the same stupid fucking thing over and over and over again when they don't even
yeah,
understand the basics, right? So I get the frustration. I get that. Not to mention if you're coming at the guy and you go, look, scammer, fuck pig, I hate you. You ruined the blockchain. I wish you were dead. Now explain your position. It's kind of like that's not exactly conducive to a conversation, right? And as someone pointed out on the TFTC, on the Zap stream, their recent thing, because they were talking about this as well. The guy said, look, in terms of the GitHub, it's not a perma ban. And they set up the rules. They said, if you're not going to comment on the technical aspects or comment on the code, don't come in here. And then they had this whole flood of people coming in going, you guys are scumbags that are corrupt and spam sucks. And they goes, okay, you're blocked, you're blocked, you're blocked, right? And so that guy, I can't remember the guy's name on TFTC, said, look, they gave you
Matt Odell might have. Yeah, Matt Odell largely. Well, there was another guy. I can't remember his name, but yeah, they went over it pretty well on that most recent podcast.
what's up, Johnny? How you doing, man? Yeah, so I
Yeah,
mean, they gave some pretty good. The thing is, it's not as simple as people want to make it. And it's not just either you're for spam or against because you go, well, of course everyone's against spam except for the spammers, right? And how do you fix it? And so Dash Junior and Mechanic say filter. We need to filter, and people have looked at that. And I think conscientious objectors have said, well, I don't know if that's the best way to do it. which doesn't mean everyone should just throw up their hands. I think they're correct that we should very much prioritize trying to cut down on spam. The economic reality though is you go, well, spam is present in the blockchain, and so now that people are aware they can do that, they need to figure out a way to not make that so it's just private channels or bloating the blockchain with spam no matter what, because mempool policy doesn't determine block construction, right? So if every node says we're all filtering this and there's still a private node that can spam the network with that shit and they can force a reorg or they can get that block out anyway, then it forces all those nodes to accept that, look at that, and go, well, this isn't a valid node, but there's going to be enough that, somehow or another you can end up with these private networks that bypass all of the node filtering and still end up with blocks that are screwed up, right? So then you start talking about, well, are we going to fork? And then you end up in the same mess that you have with block size wars and all that kind of stuff. And there's no guarantee of a positive outcome from that either, right? So you kind of, I mean, if there was an easy answer, they would have done it a long time ago, I think, but I don't think there's a very easy answer. Mechanic
Yes,
and Dash Junior think there is an easy answer. We just need to filter. And until you implement that, because they could try it, and what they might find out is that everyone just, all the people that are incentivized to spam that just go to private relays, or they don't filter, or they don't adopt the filters, and they just let the shit pass anyway, because it's in their financial interest to do so. So I don't know, man. It's not easy.
that's what I worry about is what extent is there financial interest by certain individual core devs who might be involved with Satria or other shitcoinery type stuff. The conspiratorial end of things could be I could easily imagine that it was hard to predict or imagine necessarily some new asymmetric attack on Bitcoin having incorporated SegWit and Taproot and enabling a whole bunch of stuff, and then oh yeah, now people can also do this other thing and bloat blocks. Um, the conspiratorial side could or should have core developers have been able to imagine or have seen that, and was it kind of like washed over, covered over, and allowed for because there were core devs who would like to do shitcoinery on Bitcoin. Um, I'm
Well,
not
I mean,
saying
if you
so,
look at
but
it, I don't see any evidence of it. Is my thing. Like, I'm
yeah,
not saying that couldn't happen. I'm just saying if someone's going to make that accusation, well, from interviewing people, right? Like if you're doing an interview, you're not asking questions you don't already know the answer to, right? Or otherwise, your interview can go sideways. You can end up in all kinds of screwed up stuff. You know how defense attorneys attack positions. You know how prosecutors attack positions. They don't ask questions they don't already know the answer to, and they're not 3 or 4 steps ahead of you, and they're not planning on orienting your conversation in a direction they want, right? Because otherwise, they can get derailed. And part of the problem with like a lot of those accusations, because Lop, I think, did a concept act or something like that. And everyone goes, oh, it's because you're with Satria. And you go, well, what you've done right now is made an allegation that you don't have proof of, because what could be going on in Lop's head, and this is just hypothetical, and I want to make that very clear. This is a
we're
very
not mind reading here.
as a very clear hypothetical, you go, Lop has something where he goes, ooh, if we can get the data caps lifted, I can do this crazy new spam thing that's going to make me a lot of money. Got nothing to do with Satria, got nothing to do with anything else. He's just got a super secret plan, and he's just back there like, Burns going, yes, I can't wait to launch this. The second you go, you're doing this because of Satria, then he goes, oh, thank you. You just gave me cover for every other thing that has nothing to do with what I really want to do. And you now have focused the conversation on something that I can easily disprove. And that's a problem, because then he can just sit there and bat these objections away, and he never has to even come close to being revealed on what his true nefarious purpose is. I'm not saying that's what's happening. What I'm saying is, if you come at it with a strategy, I'm going to make a naked accusation, you eliminate all other possibilities for argument. You eliminate all other possibilities, because there could be any number of things going on in that guy's head that you're not aware of. And now you're never going to be aware of, because you've given him and everybody a place to focus that might not necessarily be what you need to be looking at. So I don't know if
Yeah,
that's clear, but
it gave them the excuse to ban Bitcoin Mechanic. I mean, basically that was Bitcoin Mechanic's sort of statement about Citria, and that's what banned him.
well,
Um,
he didn't even make that. He pointed out, like, someone else made the comment. They said, "Hey, this is a conflict of interest, right?" And so Mechanic just came along and said, hey, and that guy got banned for it. And then Mechanic said, hey, you can get banned now for pointing out a conflict of interest. And he got banned, right? So he was
Yeah.
pointing out that someone pointed something out, and that, and he got ban hammered for it. And he even relented in one. He said, well, I probably, that wasn't really, it was sort of violative of the rules. I kind of get why they did that, kind of. But I don't think it should have happened. And I think that caused a lot more outrage than anything else. Because the guy's a legit developer. He's a CTO of a major mining
Ocean.
operation, and there's no reason to exclude his commentary from it. The problem with making those kind of accusations, though, is you go, someone else could flip that script around just as easily, and that's the problem with these naked accusations, because it could be just as easy for someone to come along and go, oh yeah, well of course you guys oppose it because that helps your mining business. And then you go, oh, so what, you guys are compromised because you don't want to fix blockchain bloat because that helps you make more money, that gets more attention to your knots development, that gives you more attention to your mining protocol, and you guys wouldn't be competitive unless you had a bunch of people pointing there on ideological grounds. So the only reason you're opposing this, it's not because you care about the blockchain, it's because you want to make your mining operation more money. And so, of course, if you said that to one of those guys, they would get outraged. They would be completely pissed, and rightfully so, because it's a naked accusation. There's no evidence of that. It's very clear to me that these guys are coming from a very conscientious point. But if you start leveling naked accusations about hidden motives, it's a squirrely path, and it's easy to abuse, and that's why this conversation is so derailed, because people didn't stick to the technical merits, they didn't stick to the proposal, they didn't stick to the problems, they started leveling accusations, and that's where this all goes sideways. So
Yeah.
it's not
What?
helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what they don't want that in their GitHub forums
Right.
and
At all.
developers.
It's not
They
helpful.
yeah. So what I do trust about Ocean and Knots is that they're, you know, very conservative, tight principles, but very principled. And then LOP, back in the day, big blocker into Ethereum and cat pictures and all the other stuff. Um, he's into security and having things work well and self custody, all that kind of stuff. And I think he sees Bitcoin as a network on which to share stuff, and that it's not just for Bitcoin peer to peer electronic cash system. It's like, well, whatever may be that people want to use it for, it can do that. And if it can do that, I don't judge it. And maybe quietly on the side, by the way, he's doing his own shitcoinery.
Right.
So then I'm like, I don't like LOP, but it's not that technically that he's wrong. I don't like the messaging and his approach.
I find it kind of grotesque in a way, and I think it's very short-sighted thinking. And I can also say, like, there is a Satoshi email that said, well, in the future we can talk about bigger blocks, and there's another Satoshi email that says, yeah, in the future we can have some programmability like escrow services and all this kind of stuff. So these are all non or pseudo monetary uses, but they're not pure monetary uses, not pure cash transmission of stuff. So to say Satoshi never contemplated other uses for the blockchain, not true. Satoshi never contemplated making bigger blocks, not true. Satoshi never contemplated anything. They go, well, some, and that's the problem of deciphering this stuff, because you can say there is a conscientious position that goes, well, Satoshi said we could have escrow on Bitcoin. Is that just money to money? No, that's holding money in a contract somewhere. So that's not a strict monetary use. I personally don't think Satoshi would support things like lifting Opportune. I think he would
No.
be very opposed to dick butts on the blockchain.
Yeah.
And I also think that there are some use cases, like nobody complains about Lightning, right? But that's in witness data, right? So you go, well, is Lightning a pure, monetary use case? Kind of, yeah, but it's a layer two.
A
And,
layer two. Yeah. Go do that on another layer. Fine.
right,
But
yeah.
don't hammer the mempool and the blocks with your shit.
Yeah, which is already happening though, is the problem,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so Opportune may reduce that. I don't think so. I don't think they've got the right of that idea. Like when I first heard about it, I was like, well, this kind of makes sense. And I was sort of 51-49 on the side of like, well, maybe they should not completely lift the limit. I think that's just absolute insanity. Like that underestimates so many nefarious potentials for that. But I think if you go, well, in this case, we can go to 150 bytes and see what happens, right? And see if
Sure.
their financial projections hold true, or see if anything changes, or see if anything goes here to there, and maybe revisit it and go, well, we're going to test this for 6 months, and if it doesn't work, we're going to go back to 80 bytes or whatever. Because there's no guarantee that Satri is going to do their thing, and there's no guarantee that that's not the only thing they have in mind, and they might have some other really nefarious thing that they're going to pack into that 150 bytes that nobody's aware of yet. And there may be something that Lop is envisioning where he goes, ooh, if I can get 500 bytes in there, I can do XYZ, and nobody can see that coming, but I'm going to launch it on the world, and I'm going to make a bunch of money off of it. I'm not saying that's what he's doing. He may also very well be like, hey, look, guys, this is a better way to prevent bloat. Yes, I'm responsible for a significant amount of bloat. This is going to cut down on some of that shit, and you guys should do it. And he might be conscientiously thinking this is a better way to prune some of the damage he's already done. I don't
Right.
know, but it's, the problem is if you start assigning motivations to people that you don't know what that motivation is, you end up in a really, really sticky wicket, so to speak, right?
Yeah, and all kudos to the developers that contributed to Core and Bitcoin in other ways who have helped make Bitcoin what it is today. But I am, as Bitcoin evolves and matures, I'm much more pro ossification. Like, if you're going to make changes, even if they seem small, the benefits better be clearly understood to outweigh risks. And if risks remain kind of unknown, like you said, it's kind of like, well, could do this or could do that. We're not sure. Well, then don't just take the fence down.
Right.
It better. I want ossification.
Yeah.
Even as Bitcoin evolves, if it's running, if it's not broken, don't fix it.
Well, it's broken is the problem. That's the thing is like the Satria example is an acute example, but it's just one example, right? Because right now for Satria to build their little watchtower bridge, whatever shenanigans they're up to,
Shit.
they are using unspendable taproot outputs, which bloat the blockchain unnecessarily. So they can stuff what they say or what they claim is 144 bytes. Um, I'll get to that in one sec, Johnny.
Yes.
Yeah, and you're right. It's,
Good
it's
thought,
super
Tony.
interesting. But the point is if you keep incentivizing people to use bad data practices to stuff their little scheme into witness data, that bloats the blockchain and it bloats it in a way that you can't get rid of it, right? Whereas if you open up op return a little bit, then potentially maybe some of that spam will move out of bloating, unprunable witness data onto op return data, which can be pruned, right? Which can help
Yeah.
reduce the size of stuff. But the overwhelming problem is not whether or not people are using op return. The assumptions that the core devs are making is like, well, the financial incentives are going to incentivize some people to use op return data and not spam our blockchain. But the opponents of that go, well, it's already cheaper to use SegWit, so it's already cheaper to use witness data. Why would they ever just shift over here just to be nice guys because they're swell when they can? It's just as easy and inexpensive to stuff it into witness data. So,
I can
or
see that.
or making unspendable taproot outputs. So,
Much
I'm
as
not
I
a big fan of Cop Lop in general. I mean, I respect the guy for the contributions he's made in the past. I do not like what he's done with dick butt pictures on the blockchain. And I
well, to be
think
clear,
hate
cat pictures.
dick butt pictures. It's all
Okay.
just it's. I mean, there's an enormous amount of problems. But to your point, Fritz, like with I agree with ossification, and like you said, if they're going to make a change to the blockchain, they better really think about it. It's better be
This
sure
is
that they're
serious stuff. This is our future. Don't
and,
play
and
games with the future.
well, they did though. That's the
I
point. Is
know.
when it
Yeah, I know.
came to SegWit, they went. Everyone thought about it real hard and projected and went, "Yeah, this is going to help the blockchain." And they talked about it and they debated it and everyone got on board and it passed. And then they said, "Taproot, is this going to help?" And there's some opposition and some people yes and some people no. And they finally did it. And then it turned out to be a complete catastrophe for the blockchain. So you go, well, so yeah, should you ossify? Sure. Now you have to figure out how to ossify now that you've already screwed something up pretty bad in the past, right?
Well, and I would say that Bitcoin being quite anti-fragile and resilient, the market has managed. all the ordinal stuff, even as when fees are low and blocks aren't that full and it's easy to put that in there, it's like, yeah, it fills it up with some of that garbage. Um, but when like you said, higher priority and important transactions need to be prioritized, the market works it out and Bitcoin's survived, and run. But yes, do I like it? No. But is Bitcoin running? Yes, running
Right.
just fine.
Well, it's not though. That's why they're having this discussion. If it were running just fine, no one would be talking about this stuff right now.
Well,
As Mechanic pointed out in his video, the amount of bloat in the blockchain is significant, and
yeah,
he gave an
yeah,
example. He said, "Look, back just in 2018 or whatever, on less robust hardware, I could sync the blockchain in a day. Today,
yeah,
it's like 3 days on more advanced hardware with better connections and all kinds of stuff. That's a problem." And their concern is like, hey, we're going to shrink the node pool, and that centralizes the shit out of things. So if you keep bloating the node pool, so these smaller users can't run a node, that's problematic. I look at that in a sort of wider lens, and I go, there's only 17,000 reachable nodes right now anyway. There are anywhere from 20 to 80 million Bitcoin holders. So you go, there's something like 0.02% of holders are running nodes. So the problem isn't necessarily the bloat, and I mean it is a problem, and it's going to become a bit much bigger problem, which is why they're trying to figure out how to mitigate the bloat. And if you have just a bunch of apathetic hodlers that go, well, it's anti-fragile and we don't have to worry about it, Bitcoin runs and it always has run and it gets through it, and you go, yeah, but it's not as anti-fragile as you think, and there are massive centralization pressures right now, and if people aren't becoming more aware of that and aren't getting involved with this project, it is going to centralize. Like, that is the natural path of this, and it's the path that we're on right now. And that's what Mechanic is fighting against. He's going, look, man, there are massive centralization pressures that are non-monetary use cases. The more we incentivize this shit, the faster it's going to centralize. We can't have that. The core people are saying, yeah, there's centralization pressures because of all this spam, and we want to try and mitigate or minimize the amount of centralization pressure that we're encouraging. And it's
yeah,
a very fine distinction, and it's problematic to solve is the big issue right now.
yeah. I'm gonna run knots just to learn more about it and see what it's like, and just to educate myself. I I never totally trusted Lop. Just being a big blocker and then dabbling in shitcoin space, I was like, he sees Bitcoin as like this open market of a network versus just peer to peer cash. So I was always kind of on the fence about him. More lately, I'm like, I don't trust the guy, or some unsaid motivations behind the scenes I may or may not know. I have also, to Lop's credit, I have read things he's written, and he's prolific. He's quite active and prolific, and very, very smart. On
Yeah.
his To Johnny's question, I've read things by Lop over the years, even years ago, about security and personal practices and self custody and ways to do things. And I found him quite based and very to the ground level, thought through at every level, like security and operational security and physical security, like down to like your your personal social network, your personal home environment, your gun ownership, your lead pipe buried in the backyard. He's hardcore on security. So down in there, like, he gets a lot that I really vibe with.
Right.
So that's where it's weird. I know he gets that. Like, he's pro gun. He's pro, like, core fundamental human rights and privacy stuff. So bridging that with dabble space on Bitcoin is just a network. It's like, it's weird. I don't get it.
I don't either. The thing is, I wouldn't, people have leveled all kinds of accusations at the guy. Like I said, I don't like what he's done. I really don't. And I also recognize the guy's a developer, and these guys, it's the engineering problem. They just go, hey, here's a problem that's not a problem that we can start engineering a fix for, and it's just like,
Yeah.
don't mess with stuff, because they're always trying to improve something. They're always trying to find a better way. They're always trying to do, so there's this. and I think that's in the engineering mindset of like, how can I improve this? And they don't always give credit or thought or enough weight to like downstream effects or the benefits of stability or the benefits of ossification and not tinkering with shit. Um, so it's I don't know. Like he just put out a video the other day about address poisoning attacks and like how to be careful with that and things like that. So uh, it's it, like you said, he's prolific, he's smart. I think that institutional investors might shy away from an investment where the children are arguing and fighting on the playground.
I could see that. I agree.
I agree with you. The problem is it isn't already. It's already not pure hard money. It is a mix of hard money and dick butt pictures on the blockchain. Like, and that was a fundamental reality that was uncorked with SegWit and Taproot.
As
So
long as people like say the big players, the big investors, as long as they learn about Bitcoin and that at our surface level it works. It's a hard asset. The money and the mathematics are there. And then as they learn more about it and there's that FUD over the the garbage on it, if they can overcome that and realize, I think, that Bitcoin still works, um, I don't see it as much of a risk there, but I could see where it's a kind of unknown for sure for big players. They might be like, well, yeah, but what if? What if our business is running on this and the blocks are overrun with garbage?
well, I would say there is zero chance that the institutions have not contemplated all of this stuff. They have enormous resources, and they have people that are far smarter than you or me or anybody else in our circle, probably, that devote nothing but their attention and time and effort towards understanding the risks involved in any investment decision they make. So the fact that there is institutional buy-in to this already tells me they've already contemplated any number of outcomes that can come from these sort of disputes, and they already see a way that this is helpful to them, right? Like they already have figured out. They go, well, if it goes this way, we'll make money. If it goes the other way, we'll make money. If it goes to privatization and centralization, we'll make money. If it stays opaque or transparent and pure, will make money. But they haven't not looked at all those angles. There's zero chance they have. And I would argue probably most of the people at BlackRock and Fidelity that are making decisions about whether or not to adopt Bitcoin have already contemplated many of these arguments far deeper than probably the core devs or Dash Jr. or Mechanic or anybody. There's zero chance those guys just went, oh, I trust Michael Saylor, so let's do it. Right?
Right. I
They're
would presume so.
they're putting
And
billions
that's where
on the line, you know.
and that's where I also personally I feel like I trust the network. I think it's big and huge and I trust the market forces. I think TikTok next block. I think I do. I'm glad the conversation is happening. I hate to see it get personal ad hominem like attack stuff when it's complicated and there are engineers like you said the engineer effect where you've solved a lot of problems, you've done a lot of stuff, and you're kind of like you're just a walking solution looking for problems.
Yeah.
And well, hopefully you target the right problems or um, don't just be looking for like the next little improvement. Like I like ossification. Sorry. So
Well, yeah. I mean, I do too, and that's the thing is they could have ossified it before SegWit, right? But then
that's true.
there
Um,
was the block size problem and the throughput problem, and so there's always a new problem that is cropping up that is a relevant problem. And it's funny because you say, "Well, I trust the network," and I go, "Well, the cornerstone phrase of the network is don't trust verify," right? So
yeah.
I do not necessarily trust the robust health of the network. And if you listen to Mechanic's video, he says, look, man, we have already crossed the Rubicon. He said, the weeds have been overrun. The yard is out of control and we're losing Bitcoin right now. Bitcoin is dying. And you go, ooh, that's not great because you can argue, well, maybe the guy's hyperbolic or maybe the market will figure out and stuff like that. Well, right now the market is favoring centralization and high fees for dick butt pictures. And if you go, well, if that's what the market is favoring, and that's what the market determines, and we've lost everything that's important about Bitcoin. So that's why I am also grateful for the conversation. I hope what it does, and it's unfortunate to me that I see a lot of people just going, "Well, I don't understand this. I don't know," and they just go back to like, in 20 years you're going to be able to retire on zero point 0.5 Bitcoin or whatever. And just go like, "Look, dude, that'll work if you get people involved with the network. People can't just passively sit like." I love that you run a miner. I love that you're running a node, and it's awesome that you're looking into knots. I think that's great, Fritz. I too run a node, I too run a miner, and I too am looking at these problems. And one of the reasons I have focused lately is miner centralization, lack of node participation, and core monoculture. Those are three huge unmitigated risks right now. And people just kind of go, well, market will figure it out. And I go, well, that's not how this works. That's not how this is going to play out. The grassroots participation is going to fix those problems, not just going, well, someone will figure it out, because that's a that's a passive revolution, and there's no such thing as a passive revolution. That's how you end up. That's where we are all right now under sovereign authority, right? We just go, well, someone will figure out this big problem with immigration, or someone will figure out this problem. Someone will figure out someone. I just need to call attention to someone will figure it out. And go, no, you got to participate, right? It's a
Yeah,
participatory thing. If you're not running a node, you're not participating in the network. If you're not mining, you're not participating in the network. If you're not understanding the difference between like this spam solution versus this spam solution, you're not participating in the network. And it takes more of that. There should be right now. There should be at least probably 100,000, 200,000 nodes running, bare minimum, right? Just to keep up with some of this demand, because that gives voting power to the users. They can go, we're not upgrading to this, roll it back, or we're never going to upgrade to it, right?
right.
And the more and more, if you had a million nodes out there, then this thing, and then I would go, okay, now I trust market forces, right? But at 17,000 reachable nodes, I go, no, I don't trust that at all. That is very fragile, and that it is the most distributed thing we have, but it's not as distributed as a percentage of users as it should be. So at least 1% of users should be at the node level, and if you just take a conservative estimate of 20 million users, that's a lot more than 17,000 people. So
Yeah. Um, yeah, grass-fed participation. What is encouraging about it all is the fact that when a topic like this comes up, that you do see this level of concern and interest. So at least it's exercising participation. So it's a chunk of drama for sure, and attacks ad hominem, whatever. But as it churns, what I am encouraged by is the fact that people are paying attention, and it creates education,
yeah,
um, and it may help with a shift. Matt Odell mentioned that their OpenSats funding organization, and through was it 1031 maybe.
yeah,
Anyway, but they're like, hey, if you develop on knots, or if you work
yeah.
like,
Apply. Yeah,
yeah, apply. We want to fund knots developers, alternative developers. We want more diverse participation, and we'll fund that.
yeah.
I think that's great. So thanks, Johnny.
Thanks, Johnny. I
It's
appreciate
kind of
it.
like what's been happening lately, huh?
Yeah,
As we try to keep up. Again, it's these are complicated things, and I just love being able to participate in my own knowledge, and just that it's not just black and white, straightforward all the time. It's like we want Bitcoin as the future of all money to survive forever. So what does that take?
yeah.
And it's going to be not just, oh, more people are zapping on it. That's a piece, but
It's a
nodes,
huge piece. Yeah,
miners, distribution, decentralization, diversification.
yeah.
Um, so
Well, I mean, we need participation in the network, and I hope, and I haven't seen much of it, and I'm such a tiny voice in the Twitter sphere and all that kind of stuff. But if I had any mission in life, I go, I want to see Bitcoin become a base layer monetary system, right? And part of that I recognize right now as part of my mission in life, maybe, is to go, look, self custody is huge. That's one of the most important things you can do is take your Bitcoin off these exchanges. Don't provide opportunities to have other people confiscate your Bitcoin, and participate in the network. You have to be part of the solution, not just. And I love the people that have promoted Bitcoin to the point where we've got as many hodlers as we do now. I think it's great. I think the fact that the network has grown so big is enormous and fantastic. And it needs to continue growing from the participation side as well. Pointing hash to ocean, I think, is great because that they are one of the few people that are talking about miner centralization, and they're a tiny, tiny thing. So if you had, let's say, a million hodlers all go buy 5 bit axes and point all that hash to ocean, that's going to increase their share of mining capability, right? That's huge because it's not some centralized entity right now. And even the problem with like solo Satoshis and stuff, all those are just broken down ant miners, right? But there's 3 manufacturers that make all the mining hardware. That's a huge problem. Like that's as Mechanic pointed out, they've already found backdoors in those ASICs. They've already
They
found
did.
those things.
Recently there's a whole thing like reflash your Antminer firmware and make sure it doesn't have this thing that's you
Yeah,
know mining to a test. I mean, I read a thing about it. It was like, boy, if you have an Antminer, double check your firmware.
yeah, 100%. And that is an insecure hardware chain, and that's problematic, right? So as Trump is going around talking about reshoring manufacturing and things like that, we need to get U.S. made miners, and we need to get like Mara just said, hey, we're OFAC compliant. And I go, you, they're a huge mining operation and they're OFAC compliant. You go, that's not Bitcoin. That's a problem. And so while people are talking about spam and whether or not we should be filtering, you go, well, you got these major pools that are talking about being OFAC compliant. That's not great. These private relays are a problem, and it's really, really hard to mitigate that unless number go up. So yeah, we need more people buying Bitcoin. We need more number go up, but the institutions are aware of that. They go, hey, we can stuff transactions. We don't have to go to your public mempool. We can just go to our friendly neighborhood miner that we have a 30% stake in through BlackRock and just tell them, hey, put all our blocks out first, period. And they'll just sit there and stuff block after block after block with whatever transactions BlackRock has. And you go, well, what about the plebs? They don't matter. They're gone. Go settle on Lightning. That's not our problem. That's not good for the movement. That's not good for anybody. So there are huge problems that are confronting Bitcoin and its decentralization and its permissionlessness and its censorship resistance. And those are acute problems that need to be dealt with soon, like not in 5 years when numbers gone up finally, but now. Like people need to get involved now, and they need to start thinking about this stuff now, and they need to add their voices to conversation now. So that's my priority in life.
Yeah. And so Jill asks an interesting, good question about resources for learning how to mine and run a node. I think
Ooh,
depending um, now, depending on your technical background and the time that you have to devote to it, I think it's easy to get into the weeds and get really complicated and maybe overwhelmed because you can do everything from, say you build your own little Raspberry Bolt, Raspberry Pi device and do the Linux thing and tinker with that to I might say generally it's like go to solo Satoshi and just buy yourself a standalone little device that all you have to do is connect it to your Wi-Fi and plug it in, and then on your computer, look at it and point it to an address you want or whatever, and you could just start really simply with solo Satoshi on a little solo miner, um, and from there. Uh, you can easily run a node. Now, I'm not saying don't run core. Core happens to be easy. You can run it on.
hey, Fritz, sorry to interrupt. Would you share that link? Because mine doesn't go out to YouTube for some reason. It's only on Rumble. But that is a link. Jill, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead. Let me put this up if I can.
But this is the Ministry of Nodes. They've got a great series on how to get into this stuff. I know it's super technical, or it can be technical, but they do everything: overview of Bitcoin node box, why run a node, hardware, BIOS and OS installation, Ubuntu, Bitcoin Core, selecting Electrum server. I mean, it's an amazing resource to get in if you want to start. And I would say just take it in chunks and just kind of ease your way into it, because it can be very difficult to, wrap your head around all this stuff immediately, especially if you're not familiar with like Linux and pulling down packages and all that kind of stuff. But it's not insurmountable, and that is a great resource. But I want to just salute you just for even thinking about it, because
Yeah,
that's exactly what we need, is people to kind of go, maybe you're not going to figure out every single aspect of this. It's a huge technical thing. If you're not an engineer, it can be daunting. But the fact that you're just willing to look and try and understand, it might take you a year to figure it out. but that's great. I think it's wonderful, and I salute you 1,000%. I think it's awesome. So yeah, we need
Good link.
like you to go out and figure this stuff out. If you want a real super easy way to just get your toes in without thinking about a lot of technical stuff, FutureBit makes a mining solution. It's a desktop miner that has a node built in, and it's pretty low barrier to get in, get your node set up, and be mining. You can either point your hash to Ocean, which I recommend, or you can point it right to your own node. But if you're mining to your own node, what you're doing is lottery mining, and you never know, you might just hit a block, and
It's better odds than the lottery.
it's significantly better odds than the lottery. But the thing is, it's such a super easy solution that they've set up there. I'm a big fan of what they did with that. It's a little pricey. It's probably $1,000 or something, like $800. I don't know. But if you just get the Apollo 2 full node, and there's just sort of step-by-step instructions, and if you're not super techy, it can still be a little intimidating. Just kind of work your way through it. Like, the only thing you're going to lose is about a light bulb's worth of electricity every day, so
Sure.
it's kind of like, it's a great way to get into it, and without a lot of tech setup and a lot of like finagling stuff. And it's a low barrier entry, and then from there build on that knowledge, I think, is my recommendation.
Yeah. My progression through all of it, it was like starting with um, buying, getting off zero, buying, and I just was on an exchange, and then finding the right kind of wallet that I liked that was custodial, but like learning about, you know, Strike and Moon and others at the time, and then just kind of getting used to that. And then it's like, oh, run a node just on my PC, and so I just ran Core, and this it synced up full node. Got used to that, played with that. Now I mean I'm looking at knots now, but then it was like, okay, I'm gonna I'm gonna get a little Raspberry Pi and have a standalone because Windows updates and wants to reboot and freaking gets disconnected and it's Windows.
All right.
But so then I'm like, I'm going to run a little Unix device, and so and then doing the command prompt stuff. There's really good guides, tutorials on Raspberry Bolt, and so then I have a little separate standalone node, and then put a Lightning node on it. So running Lightning and kind of played around with Lightning, and then I'm like, you know what? I'm not mining, and so next step being getting a few miners and
Yeah.
just my basic little you know I got three little miners there, but they just sit and hum away.
Yeah.
and
Make it a
and
little
between
more.
you know if you got a few that point at Ocean, you're contributing to that. And if you want to lottery mine one or two or all of them, it's always kind of like, hey, you never know.
Yeah.
um,
Well, I mean, that's the beauty of all of this stuff is not necessarily that like one person's going to make a huge difference in the network, but one person leads to two people, leads to 10 people. It's an exponential growth kind of thing. And what we really, I can't stress enough, and I'm so desperate to spread this message as much as possible. We desperately need people to engage with the network in a meaningful way. And that doesn't mean just buying your coffee in El Salvador. It doesn't mean just like sit on your stack on Kraken. It doesn't mean just self custody. It means self custody and, interact with the network through your node and make sure everything you're doing is supporting decentralization of the network. And nodes are the most powerful tool that we as users have, right? It's shocking to me that someone would go, "Hey, you need to self custody your Bitcoin," and not run a node. I go, that's not; those are not mutually exclusive things. You need to run your own node because you can then validate your transactions. You can then validate the network. You can see what the state of the network is. So it's super important because you also then suddenly give yourself a vote in the network. If someone pushes out some upgrade that you go, hey, I don't want this. This is a bad idea. You guys haven't thought this through enough. You can vote with your node. You can go take your upgrade and stuff it. I'm staying on this version. I'm staying on 27, not going to 28. And if enough of you do that, then the thing doesn't work. It doesn't propagate. It goes away. And
yeah.
so that's the power of the voting power of having a node. And so right now we have 17,000 people voting. You go, that's not enough, man. You need like 17 million people voting or 7 million people voting or 700,000 people voting. Then you start making sure that the network is truly decentralized. And if you can get pools like Ocean with their model, which I appreciate very much, whether you choose to run knots or not is up to you. I mean, there's pluses and minuses to knots and their filtering solution. but at least that's configurable because you can get rid of those filters if you want on knots. Whereas Core is trying to make it so you can't even filter, which is also a problem. And I think I can't remember which developer pointed out. They go, you got to give these people a knob, man. That's you can't take away their knobs. So but these are higher order considerations. At the bare minimum,
Hmm.
run a node, and at the very least, just go, I am or am not going to upgrade my node to follow this policy, and that is a huge benefit to the network already. So, yeah,
Yeah.
awesome.
I forgot to point out self custody as a part of that. Yeah, learning to self custody, and then as you're learning too and playing around and stuff, not getting so all in on Bitcoin and you get over your skis that then you make a catastrophic mistake, because when you take on the power of it all, you're also taking on responsibility. So you want to navigate to the extent that you know what you're doing too.
Mm,
But um,
good point.
yeah, it's a long path, and I have a not to belabor our time here. We're at an hour, but I have one theoretical question that I guess could be practical, but I want to see what you think about this. I know a guy, not the sharpest tool in the shed, but
You're not talking about me, are you?
no, I know a guy who knows
Right
himself.
here, man.
Yeah. Um, he forgot that he had an old retirement account sitting somewhere that he'd changed careers, and was like, oh, you know what? It's not even fully vested, but it could be. But when it is, in 15 years, you would theoretically get about $400 a month when
Mm,
you retire.
yeah.
Meanwhile, it just sits in an account accruing interest, I guess.
Right.
Um, um, do you wait until you're 65 to get your $400 a month, or do you, for the rest of your life, or do you cash it out and the state takes 20% of it, and you take, you, it's, say it's worth like $37,000, and you cash out and you're going to get like $30,000,
Right.
um,
25, but sure.
or less. Yeah.
Liquidating that
I
shit.
got to do my calculator. So you say you're going to get out a little chunk. You're welcome, Jill. Good question. Um, do you cash out and put it in Bitcoin now,
You're
or do
asking the
you
wrong person because that's exactly what I did. I took the penalty. And the thing was, is I actually had an opportune time because I was leaving the Department of Corrections and I was moving to the jail. And during that transition, I had an opportunity to cash that shit out. And I was just like, yeah, take it out. Yeah, 100%. That's going to
probably
Bitcoin.
to your benefit?
Oh, yeah. Well, I lost it all since, so it's all gone. I don't have any Bitcoin now, but um, I lost it on a skiing accident. I hear a lot of people
Yeah,
in the lake, but I lost it.
you got over your skis and hit a tree.
Yeah, I hit a tree and then Bitcoin gone. It was weird. So I don't have any Bitcoin, but but at the time, yeah,
Yeah,
no, I 100% would dump that for Bitcoin because what's the value of your 400 bucks in 15 years? I go,
exactly.
you're gonna be able to buy a McHappy meal, for 400 bucks,
Can
or
I
you can.
get 5 Big Macs? That'll be $400.
Yeah, exactly. It's $100 a Big Mac, dummy. So yeah, I wouldn't be holding out for that sort of outcome. Like any fiat you can convert now is worth a lot more in the future. Provided the network stays decentralized and secure.
Yeah. Okay. Not financial advice, but I'm trying to help my the guy I know
Yeah.
make what would be a big decision. So
I mean, if it's something he's already forgotten about, like if you just found some forgotten money, put it in Bitcoin. Don't you're not going to miss it. And the thing is, if there's some 25-year-old or 25-year, veteran of the government service, like your pension and Social Security and everything else is going to be giving you a lot more. So if you need that extra 400 bucks, you've done something wrong. Go get a job at Home Depot for 5 hours a week. You'll make it up, no problem. But I guarantee you, if you put it in, well, I shouldn't say I guarantee. I have a very strong indication that if you put it in Bitcoin, it's going to work out better for you. So, yeah,
yeah.
happy meal. Yeah.
Yeah, on one hand, I'd be like, well, you could retire now and get 400 a month right now. Well, okay, that's a consideration. But when I'm imagining, oh, yeah, in 15 years, when you're 65 and then you're getting this 400 a month and getting taxed on that every year. Um, yeah, it's like do you wait 15 years for 400 a month, or do you take the, you know, quarter of a Bitcoin now and get damn Bitcoin now? I think I have a sense of what's maybe a better approach
Yeah,
long term.
yeah. Let's get Bitcoin now.
And it's
More
like, dude,
Bitcoin.
if you had remembered this a couple of years ago when you could have gotten a whole coin,
Yeah, for that
would have
same
been better,
or
buddy.
even that
But
two
no,
whole. Yeah, like if you had just bought at the market low, you know, you're sitting on two Bitcoin. I mean, his 30 grand would have been 200 grand today. So you
yeah,
go, well, there you go, dude. So what do you think? Should you hang on? Because if you had just done this decision 2 years ago, you'd have $200,000 in the bank right now. And if you do it right now, you're probably going to have, maybe 400,000 in the bank. So how long do you want to wait? It's up to you, buddy.
right,
Social
yeah.
Security is a scam. 100%.
I don't trust. That's the thing. I like so state PERS, Social Security. I can get online and do these formulas, and then that's at like current fiat thinking is like, oh, when I'm so old, I can get so much a month at that time. Like, okay, that seems like a thing, a retirement plan. I don't trust that the money won't be so debased it won't be just the mandibles and like, oh gee, you wish you got your suitcase of cash, you wish you
Yeah.
had in something
That's
else.
a good one. Yeah.
Separately, I don't trust necessarily these systems themselves remain solvent or don't rug pull you,
Right.
because it's not your keys, not your coin. So
Yeah. I'm just
anyway,
assuming I get a 30% haircut by the time I'm ready to cash out. So we'll see though. But anyway,
cool.
hell of a
All
show.
right,
Yeah,
good show.
a lot of techie stuff, man. Thank you
Yeah,
everybody for joining us. I appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun, and go run a node if you're watching still. Go fire up a node, go fire up a miner, join the network, learn, educate, participate. It's huge. It's more important than you think. It's the
it's
survival of it
fun.
depends on it.
Yeah, it's fun. It keeps you thinking, and you'll be participating.
Yeah.
You feel good inside.
Yeah. Be part of the revolution, not a watcher. You know.
Yeah,
You don't even have to fire a shot. You just got to plug something in.
yeah. This is the least violent revolution ever happened in the history of humanity.
Join the militia. Plug in a miner.
Cool.
All right, everybody.
All right.
Take it easy.
Bye, everybody.